This is the Dallas Morning News.
Hello, everybody. Welcome into SportsDay Insider presented by the Dallas Morning News. I am Kevin Sherrington, joined by my pals Grant and Shawn McFarland, both of whom are in Surprise, Arizona. And the reason that we've got both of them on at the same time is that we're going to give you a little Rangers roundtable here. And this will be a little specialty, just all Rangers all the time today. So I hope you're braced for that. But first of all, fellas, I won't be out there until the 5th. Evan's going to come back at some point, then I'm going to go back out there with him, and then Shawn is going to leave. That'll be enough for Shawn. He'll have had enough at that point. But we will all overlap at one point, and that'll be nice, right?
I like half a day.
Half a day?
Yeah, half a day.
Wow. That sounds.
Where you draw the line.
Kevin, we have to clear out a lot of space here for you.
Yeah. I like having that little room over there on the end. You know, it's on the other side of that weird little
that's the casita. The casita.
Yeah. I guess that's what that is over there. I don't know. We've stayed in some strange places there in Surprise, and this place is great because it's right, next to the complex. It's like, 5 minutes. It's not even 5 minutes. A 2-minute drive. I guess I could walk it, but I'm not walking over there.
Putting green is in magnificent shape. The seams are still, they haven't split any more wide open. They're only about a half inch wide.
So you're saying they haven't done a lot of upgrades?
The house is great. This is the best house we've ever had. I've beaten Shawn in ping pong.
Do you want to talk about what happened in our final game of ping pong?
Well, I kind of ruined it because maybe I incurred a sports injury, but I don't want to really give it away that it happened during ping pong. But I made a tremendously athletic play to save a ball. And I put my hand on the table as I was reaching to get the ball, and the table kind of gave way a little bit, and I fell on my butt.
The foosball table, I think, got the worst of it when you went slamming into that.
I can't imagine.
I've got kind of a bruised glute or a bruised cheek here that I'm kind of limping around with a little bit. But I hope you're bringing your ping pong skills, Kevin.
Yeah. Did you watch Marty Supreme? That's me. That's where they got that movie from. It was based on my life. Actually.
Yeah, we'll go with that.
Yeah, you may be the first person in the history of ping pong ever to be injured while playing it. That is not exactly the kind of sport where people are like, you're tearing their ACLs and stuff like that.
I would just like to point out that there's no competition that I'm not willing to go all out for.
Well, that is good to know. That is good to know. All right. So on that note, Mr. Competition, let's talk about what's going on with these Rangers here in spring training so far. It's obviously still early. Skip Schumaker made his first.
That would be Schumaker.
I always. But if it's Schumaker, then why didn't they spell it with the CHER instead of the KER? Okay.
Why don't you write a column about that when you come out here?
I might just do that. Come on, Schumaker maker. I'll tell him this. I'll pronounce it right when you win a few games, okay, Pally? And then that's when I'll turn on a heel and walk away. I think that'd be a great start to the relationship. Although, I noticed that when we at our first press conference with him when he was introduced, and you have to identify yourself before you ask your question. When I said my name, he kind of got a little bit of a smile on his face, like, "Oh yeah, here's this jerk." It's nice to know who this jerk is. So anyway, I took it that way anyway.
That's usually there's a whole study to be done on the fact that somebody would smile when you introduce yourself, and that the takeaway you would get is, why does this guy think I'm a jerk?
Well, yeah, exactly. That is what made me the reporter that I am today. That the stuff that I infer from some other people would say, it's like, oh, he meant something really nice by this. Oh no, he meant something bad about this, and I'm going to get to the bottom of it before we get out.
They can anticipate it with you.
Yeah, absolutely. So we had so Evan writes the story saying that they're off to a great start here. He gave a huge speech, lasted like 20 minutes. He talked about a war and famine and pestilence, and then the players ran through the wall out there onto the complex, and a World Series title awaits.
Yeah, that was pretty much it. I think that's the takeaway that you should have. Look, you get a new manager, and everybody's going to focus on the first address to the team and what tone it sets and all of that. And none of these speeches are ever going to be memorable. They're not quoting it. They're not going to be citing, this in 80 years. But I think the important things were that he really emphasized the idea of being a good teammate, finding joy in the success of others, supporting one another. Don't be as um, Brandon Nimmo described it. Don't be a deflator, be an inflator. The way Skip described it is you can be a competitor or a complainer. We're all about the catchy phrases here, but it was short, it was direct, it was brief, and to the point. And I think the players respected that. Um, and I think the other part about what's gone on here in spring training is that it's been very clear that Skip is trying to make sure his coaches feel empowered. I do think that some of the coaches that were on the staff last year may have felt deferential to Bruce Bochy a little bit, and that's only natural. I mean, here's this Hall of Fame manager that most of them didn't really have a relationship with previously, and Boch is the kind of guy that inspires that kind of respect and everything. But I think that Skip wants these coaches to make sure that they know their voices matter and that their voices should be heard and that they've got just as much input on what can go right and what needs to be fixed as he does.
Yeah, that's, and I'm sure that's right. But it also, and I'm just going to say, anytime you hire a manager, and look, Bruce Bochy wanted to come back, so they can put it any way they want to. But he's gently nudged out of the room. So uh, when you do that, you're looking to fix with the new hire whatever you felt like was lacking in the last hire. It's almost always a direct, relationship there. So was it a mistake then that Bruce Bochy didn't have all of his guys, as coaches?
I don't know if I'd say it was a mistake. I mean, I think that, yeah, whenever you hire a new manager or a new coach, you're always looking for what's different from the last guy because, in all likelihood, you're trying to change what the results were on the field. So whether that's just lazy journalism on our part or whether it's just the real human nature of how hires go down, I think you do look for the things that Skip Schumaker is bringing that are a little bit different. And I think both Shawn and I have seen a guy who, whether it's a difference or not, we've seen a guy who seems like he's proactive, who's energetic, who's younger, and I mean, I more of a peer, and some of his coaches are much more of a peer to these players than some of the guys were on Boch's staff, but. I think at the end of the day, if the Rangers got one World Series in 3 years with Skip Schumaker, that would also be considered a success.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. Okay, so what kind of guy is he then? So Evan, how many managers have you covered for the Rangers now?
42.
It seems like it, doesn't it?
Everyone since Johnny Oates. So Johnny Oates, Jerry Naron, Buck Showalter, Ron Washington, Jeff Bannister, Chris Woodward, Bruce Bochy, and now Skip.
Yeah, that's a lot. And it's still really early in the process, obviously. But are you getting an idea, personality-wise, how he compares with all those other ones?
I mean, he's got lots of energy. Wash had lots of energy. I do think that he uses. One of the things that Boch would do is his answers were often short, and they he might talk around the subject, but if you went back and looked at the answer, there was a clue or a word in there that kind of gave you what he was really thinking. I think Skip is, as in terms of messaging, I think he uses more words at this point in time that are direct and, for lack of a better term, I don't want to call them provocative, but I would say evocative. You know, they certainly bring pictures and feelings to light. So this is a guy who had a 10-year career in the big leagues, who I think is really well prepared for this situation. And I do think, I really do get the sense that I go back to that first meeting, the pitchers and catchers meeting on the first day of camp, when he didn't speak at all. And when I asked him about that, and he said, you know, he wanted his coaches' voices to be heard. I don't know that I've heard a manager say that in a long, long time. And so I was struck by that. I think, and I think the reason that he said, you know, I don't need to do the same speech twice, and I want these guys to be heard, and I want them to be, you know, I want their voices to be of significance. That to me was a pretty interesting moment.
Yeah. How about you, Shawn? What do you think?
Yeah, I think, you know, I can only compare him to Boch because that's the only manager I've covered in around Major League Baseball. But I would agree with Evan on everything he said in terms of the one thing I think I've noticed through the few media sessions we've had with him so far is I think they've been longer than Boch's. They haven't felt like I think yesterday we talked with Skip for 17 minutes maybe. It didn't feel like 17 minutes, and I think a big part of that is because of what Evan said and the language he uses, and I think he is the way I would describe it almost is like when we talk with Skip, I feel like I'm talking to really close to what he is, which is like a veteran professional baseball player. It feels like you're talking to a guy who's not that far removed from the clubhouse. It feels like you're talking to a veteran player in the clubhouse more than you are talking to a Hall of Fame manager. And I think that kind of goes along with the differences in vibes and maybe the relatability to players. Like I think there's a tangible difference in that aspect.
Yeah. Yeah, I get that. You know,
And look, Kevin, I mean, I just, you know this as well as anybody, but I go back to the Buck Showalter hire. At the time that he was hired, he was probably what this club needed. They needed somebody who was going to be assertive and who was going to take control and all of that. But that guy also, there were things in Buck's controlling nature that made his life expectancy as a manager short. When the Rangers hired Bruce Bochy, there were things that this team needed, and they needed the credibility and they needed the veteran stewardship that Bochy brought. And so different guys fit different eras differently. I think Shawn explained it really well that, you know, right now it sounds like you're talking to a more like a player, but a veteran player, than you're talking to a longtime manager. And I think there is a little bit of a difference there. And I think also, you know, not that Boch didn't get it, because everybody enjoyed talking and sitting down with Boch. I think that this is a guy who gets it. He gets what the media is doing. He gets what messaging means to his teammates. He gets the importance of having his coaches actively involved. And look, if we're sitting here a week into camp and we're breaking down things that aren't going right with the manager's messaging, there's a real issue. But I think at this point in time, you know, there's nothing to see other than what the possibilities are.
yeah, you know, of course, I like Boch. How could you not like him? But he was very close to the vest. You know, he was very good at being agreeable and talking to you. And I always loved it when he would say, "Trust me." You know, he loved to say, "Trust me," and then he'd tell you something. But he wasn't really telling you very much. And that was the thing that I always thought was interesting about him, was that in all the interviews or whatever, he wasn't real forthcoming. He was always pleasant and always you know, helpful. He was trying to help you. You ask him about things that happened, he would give you funny examples of things that happened in his career or whatever, and all that kind of stuff. That was all great. But it was all pretty close to the vest. I don't know if he was always like that as a manager. I don't know if that's just a product of being 70 years old and you've seen it all and done it all, and it's like this is just none of this really matters, and I'll be pleasant about it, but none of it really matters. So it'll be interesting to see how that translates. I can see how players would after a while start to feel these are different players, different generations, and everybody's different. It's like Gary Patterson going out to be Lincoln Riley's defensive coordinator. Gary Patterson is as great a defensive coach as I've ever been around, and one of the best head coaches I've ever been around. But his time has passed, in my estimation. If he continues to act the way he acted around his players when he was at TCU, that'll be a very short shelf life for him in Los Angeles. So it is a different world, and maybe it was time for them to move on and do something different. I'm not going to blame. I think that Bruce Bochy bears his share of blame for what happened in the last couple of years, but I also think that most of it lies at the feet of the players and the offense and the rest of that. So let's talk about some of the stuff that's been happening here with these guys and what they're doing in the offseason. I was struck by Evan's interview with Joc Pederson, in which he said he did everything possible to get ready for last season, and then when he comes in this year, he's 20 pounds lighter. So it seems to me that if the 20 pounds lighter was important this year, why wasn't he 20 pounds lighter when he came in last year? That would have been, to me, if we're just going to start somewhere and getting ready for a season, showing up in shape and in good condition should just be that's a non-starter. That's number one. And then everything else you did over the winter, okay. But the first thing you got to do is show up here in good condition, right?
Yeah, everybody hates when a guy comes into camp fat, and I will say that Joc has never been what you would look at and say that's a Joc. I mean, he doesn't have the typical lithe athlete
Was that a
body
pun?
of a yeah, it was of a center fielder. Um, and I think if you looked at him in 24, you probably saw a guy who was a little bit pudgy. And it worked for him at that point in time. As you get into your mid 30s, and things change with your body, you're going to have to make adjustments, and sometimes you have to fail. And I thought that the things that were important about Joc from his interview were acknowledging that sometimes you've got to fail to get better. And he went through that. I think, again, when I was talking to him, I didn't get the sense that he thought he came into camp last year in phenomenal shape or anything. I thought he basically was saying, look, I did everything I could to get ready to be the best player that I possibly could be during the season. I did the work as a hitter. I did the work that I was asked to do. He wasn't talking about how great he worked out in the offseason, but the point remains. He wasn't in great shape last year, and it certainly had an impact on who he was as a hitter when he was healthy. Um, and he acknowledged that, look, he didn't make things better on himself because he did a ton of stress eating early in the season when he was really struggling, and then after he broke his wrist and wasn't really able to do anything. But I do feel like he's in a better place. He's in a tremendously better place physically. I think that motivated him. And I've talked to some Rangers people. Justin Veal hit with him for 5 weeks. The hitting coach hit with him every day for 5 weeks. And I also think that, without too much psychoanalysis, I think Joc was brought in here to be a chemistry guy last year. And it's hard to be a chemistry guy when you get off to a start where you're hitting $120 and then you're hurt. And then when you look around and you see that the clubhouse is not a great place and you're not really able to do anything about it, I think it just takes you to a dark place.
Yeah, I don't doubt any of that. I will say this, and one of the things you talked about in your story.
By the way, you're looking a little bit pudgy yourself, Kevin.
No. I'm just you could strike a match on these abs here, Pally. Right here. Can you hear that? Can you hear that sound I'm making there?
What are you? You made it. What are you? A bongo?
Maybe I am. But here's the thing about Joc swing, and I gotta say, I pay attention to the local teams. I don't watch a lot of the other other teams in any sport that much, really. It's just enough for me, for my tiny brain, just to comprehend what's going on locally. But Joc comes in. That's one of the weirdest swings I've ever seen in baseball.
It's a
And
weird
and
swing, and
and
it was. I think it was hampered by the fact that he was having to get around a little bit of punch. I mean, I think it made it all that much more difficult for him. But he has worked on his hand positioning and stuff over the winter. That was a big project for him.
Yeah, we'll see what that looks like. My thought has always been, what you talked about is he's trying to get more of an uppercut and to make the swing more vertical, which it's like it's already so vertical to me. It's like I don't even know how he does it. I've always felt like the longer you can keep that swing on a flat plane, the better off you are. The better chance of meeting that ball. But whatever works for him.
That's not where we're at these days.
I guess we're not. This Ian Kinsler should make a comeback. He'd be a big fan he'd be a big on that vertical swing business. So we'll see what happens with him. The thing about Joc is that we've talked about this before about guys have got to be better, right? I mean, Josh Young's got to be better. Jake Berger's got to be better. But to me, it's probably as important for anybody to be good, because if Joc's not hitting, he's not doing you any good anyplace else, and he's clogging up the DH spot because you can't move people in and out of that. You'd love to move Seager over there and let him get a day off, at least once a week, and they may have to do that just to give him the day off, and especially if Joc's not hitting. But he's got to hit. That could make a huge difference on this team if he is anything close to what he was, as you noted earlier, in 2024.
Yeah, it's hard to split hairs. Shawn can dive into this too, but it's hard to split hairs on who needs to improve more. The only thing I would say that of those three guys, of Jake Berger, Joc Pederson, and Josh Young, the three guys who really were underperformed for most of last year, Joc has the longest track record. So you would hope that he's got the most ability to get back to his true self. I think with Josh and with Jake, the fact that they don't have long track records, we don't really know exactly who they are as players, right? We don't know what exactly they are.
All right.
Yeah,
Before we go ahead, Shawn. Yeah.
no, I was just gonna say I agree with that completely, and I've kind of been saying all off season that like so much focus is on Josh Young and Jake Berger improving, having bounced back, and understandably so. But I think the bottom line is Joc is if Joc is his career average, you're not even looking for the best season of his career. You're not even looking for 2024. If he is his career average, that would have been the third best hitter on the Rangers last season. If he is just his average. And to Evan's point, I find it hard to believe that after a decade's worth of being that hitter, it fell off so dramatically and so quickly that it cannot be rediscovered. Not to say he can fully reclaim what he was. Maybe he can, maybe he can't. But I find it hard to believe that he's just a 180 hitter now. You know what I mean? That's kind of where I'm at with Joc. And if there's just something close to his average, which I think is attainable, that does leaps and bounds for this lineup. It lengthens it. And to your point, Kevin, it creates a little more flexibility if you have a DH that you can trust to go out there however many times a week and be a plus hitter, even if it's not a 950 OPS hitter.
Oh, sure. And nobody gets that from their DHs, anyway. But yeah, just something league average would be great. That was a great point, Shawn, and I just hadn't really thought about it before, about, him coming in and all of a sudden just falling off the edge of the world, just like everybody else did. It's like when they went to the World Series, everything broke right. And then ever since then, everything is broken wrong. It is the most phenomenal 3-year period in the Rangers' history, in my estimation, because of the reputation they had built over decades, frankly, of being an offensive team, and what they did, and then all of a sudden now they're pitching well, and they never pitched well before. And obviously, some of this is the ballpark and how it's playing now, and there's a lot of factors involved in all of this. but it is just a phenomenal 3-year period in the Rangers' history.
Yeah, I think, and I think that the thing about 23 that was such a fluke was how hot they got in the playoffs. Because they had plenty of adversity in 23 that didn't go right. Like they had no closer at any point in time during the year. That fell apart. They brought in Jacob deGrom to be the ace of that staff, and he made 6 starts before undergoing Tommy John. They missed Evaldi for a significant portion of the second half. There were plenty of things that they faced that was adversity, but they got off to a good start and were able to like stay the course where they had their team supplemented. The inexplicable part of this is how that bullpen became so dominant in the postseason. I don't know that's going to go down as one of baseball's great mysteries.
Yeah. Well, that's also a nod to the point that you just want to get in the tournament. You get in the tournament, you just have no idea what will happen, and anything can happen, and that's what's so great about it. All right, but we've talked enough about these kind of things, and I apologize for steering this conversation in this way. We need to talk about what's going on now. So, Evan, you have written this week about the relationship between Corey Seager and Marcus Semien because the New York media has made a big deal out of it, referred to it as toxic. I never got the impression that I never got the impression it was anything. It was hard to tell because, Corey was never in the clubhouse and Marcus was always just sitting there by himself and always very, he was amenable to answering our questions because he knew that was part of the job, but he didn't exactly like it. So you explained to us exactly what you think was the situation, especially after talking to Seager on Monday afternoon.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think that these guys were ever very close. And I think over the past 2 years, their relationship, as the Rangers went through more and more struggles over the past 2 years, their relationship fractured more and more. But I hate to say that it was toxic. I hate to indicate that there was conflict. Most how I've described it to people is when you talk about their relationship and the level of their relationship, you first have to have a relationship. And I don't know that those guys ever did. And visibly to us, to the media, and to fans, they never saw Marcus and Corey on the field together. They never saw them talking together one on one in the same way that you saw Jacob deGrom and Nathan Evaldi pull Jack Leiter in and talk to Jack Leiter and show real investment in that. And I think as time went on, the clubhouse just got more polarized in that, well, you could either like follow Corey around or you could follow Marcus around. And that wasn't a great situation either because the number of young guys that the Rangers have tried to infuse their lineup with over the last 4 years, from Young to Carter, even to Jake Berger as an inexperienced player, and Langford clearly, and Josh Smith, those guys are looking for somebody to be able to talk to and for somebody to be able to share conversations with. I think Corey was very open to that. He wasn't going to be very proactive. He wasn't going to go out and grab guys and talk to them. And anything he talked to them about went on behind closed doors. We never saw it. So their relationship wasn't great. Okay, let's just put it that way. Their relationship wasn't great. But to say that that's the reason the Rangers made this trade, I think is overlooking the elephant in the room, which is the fact that Marcus Semien was a bad offensive player the last 2 years. He had a sub 690 OPS with over 1,200 plate appearances. He was not a good offensive player. And the Rangers had 3 of those guys that had regular playing time and put together sub 700 OPSs over a 2-year period. Adolis Garcia, Jonah Heim, and Marcus Semien. All 3 of them are gone, and none of them because they elected free agency. They are all gone because the Rangers chose to move on and thought they needed to do things to get better. So, yeah, maybe you can say that the relationship didn't contribute to good clubhouse juju, and maybe they didn't get along, and that may all be true, but it is not at the heart of the trade the Rangers made. They knew when they signed Marcus Semien as an older player than Seager that as he got into his mid-30s, and if you look at the history of second basemen, when they hit 35, it is traditionally a downhill plummet. They knew the second half of that contract was a risk. And for them to be able to take that contract and parlay it into a player who's an everyday player and who's an offensive upgrade and fits a need that they were going to have in their lineup because of moving on from Adolis Garcia, it's a smart baseball play. That's all it is.
Shawn, what are your thoughts?
Well, I think to go along with what Evan just said, I mean, look, when else?
I had a pre-show meeting with Shawn, and I said, "Now look, you're going to agree with everything I say," because Kevin never does.
Because he knows what
You're
it's like.
so smart.
Go
he
on.
Just knows what it's like. He has to live with you out there, Evan. We all know what that's like. We all try to keep. That's the first thing we all say. But we have a big meeting you didn't know about, Evan, and we all say, "Listen, everybody, just try to keep Evan happy, okay?"
You guys, you should see the way he treats me here. He doesn't let me eat. I have to sleep in the garage on the floor. I get kicked out. I get kicked outside of the house like a dog.
He's out on the back porch now. Wow.
Yeah. No, but to Evan's point, like, when else Corey and Marcus weren't best friends was in 2023 when they won a World Series. And why it mattered a lot less, or people cared about it a lot less, was because both of them were MVP caliber players. So to go along with Evan's point, like, I have felt like I have been in some mass psychosis all winter with the way some people have talked about this trade in terms of what the Rangers gave up and what the Mets gave up, and man, what a trade for the Mets to get Marcus Semien. And I don't doubt that he's still a great defender, and there are a lot of things he can still be very valuable at. But I feel like the way some folks have talked about this trade is completely overlooking the last two seasons of what Marcus has done versus what Brandon Nimmo has done. And I've been somewhat shocked at how it has been discussed at large in that aspect. So, look, the relationship between Marcus and Corey, it would not be a talking point if both of them were still guaranteed all-star MVP caliber players. One of them isn't, and that's why he's not here anymore.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. I was told that that the guys liked Corey in the clubhouse. He was always friendly to them and upbeat. As you said, that we never saw any of that, but that's what everybody said. I was told that Marcus was sometimes a little difficult to get along with, a little prickly, and so that was kind of a negative about him.
I am not going to cast either one of these guys as bad guys. They do things in their own way.
No, not bad. Neither one's a bad guy. No, neither one's a bad guy. There's no question. Bad guys are guys who are just doing bad things, off the field. Doing. I was going to say, could the Rangers swap out right fielders with the Phillies and have Nick Castellanos come back here? I don't know. Bringing beer into the dugout, maybe not a good idea during the game. But anyway,
guys who do different things in different ways, oil and water, both professionals, and it just, at 4 years together, they got a World Series. The other three didn't work out so well, and the Rangers needed to move on from Marcus as the player at this point.
Well, I will say this about the two guys: they were both a little bit high maintenance. They want to bat where they want to bat. They want to, they want to do things the way they want to do things. It wasn't like, look, you're going to get that with great players. For the most part, they do want the things the way they want them. But there is such a thing as a great player who's just kind of like a go along, get along kind of guy too. But I would never characterize either of them as that kind of player. And I'll say this too. Good luck with the Mets, hoping that he's going to have a bounce back season offensively. I think Marcus is done offensively. He's still a great defensive second baseman. And that goes along with it. That's what gives him some, his win shares are a little higher than a lot of other people because of his defense. But boy, he is a streak hitter, as streaky as anybody the Rangers have had, except for maybe Adolis Garcia. So that'll be interesting to see how that works out at second base. Now, Evan, I've seen some reporting on Josh Smith, speaking of second base, that outside of the Dallas Morning News, that they're not sure that he'll be able to handle that position every day, and that maybe he's better off being a a super utility player. I don't know that I buy that. What do you think?
You've seen that outside of the Dallas Morning News. I mean, I think that's all we've written is that he's going to be the second baseman. But the
No,
question
I
is,
said that he's better off being super utility players.
oh,
What they were saying. Adjust your hearing aids, please.
listen. I think the question on Josh Smith isn't going to get answered until July and August. He's been a fine player. He's been a good everyday player in the first half each of the last 2 years. It's in the second half where he's fallen off, and you can't know what's going to happen in the second half until you get there. So I actually feel like Josh Smith should have the second base job. And if you really want to get down to this, over the last 2 years, Josh Smith and Josh Young have had Josh Smith has been a better offensive player. If we go strictly on OPS, been a better offensive player than Josh Young the last 2 years. And so, if you want to talk about competition where Ezekiel Duran or Cody Freeman might figure in my mind, that's more at third base than it is at second base. Now, I will say this that Josh is a left handed hitter, and left handed hitters tend to fall into more platoon type situations. So, I understand that. But to this point, Josh has been an everyday player the last 2 years, and he's been a better offensive everyday player than Josh Young. And that's why I think it's great for the Rangers to say that there's competition involved, but I think they should also acknowledge that there should be competition at both second and third base.
Well, is that why Zeke Duran's taking balls at third, not at second?
Uh, for right now, I think Duran's going to take balls at second and third. I think Cody's going to take balls at second and third. I think Justin Foskey's going to take ground balls at second. So they're going to take ground balls. I believe Skip said yesterday that they're going to take ground balls at both second and third.
I completely forgot about Justin.
Duran will probably get more time at shortstop. Cody Freeman does not figure into the shortstop mix. Foskey doesn't figure into the shortstop mix. And so it may be more natural for Freeman to get more time at second, while Duran is playing both short and third.
Is Foskey any factor at all in any of this?
The manager said clean slate today, and that he's going to get a chance to win a spot on the opening day roster. And look, but he also said he's limited to second base. He's not factoring any place else. And the bottom line with that, just like you said about Joc Pederson, if you're going to play one position and one position only, and you're not a Gold Glover, you better rake. And so Justin Foskey is going to have to come out and rake this spring to really open some eyes here. Because right now, as it stands right now, I think he's the 40th guy on the 40-man roster.
Yeah, I got the impression the manager was not a big fan last year, the former manager.
No, I mean, he just didn't. Boch was not big on Foskey, and it really came down to the results. I mean, he didn't have great results his first 2 years.
Yeah, and ultimately Foskey got chances. It wasn't like he got a massive runway, but he had chances the last 2 years to produce something at the major league level, and it didn't happen.
Yeah, not a great pick. At some point, Evan, we're going to have a discussion about Kip Fagg and how the draft process has gone over the last 20 years, 25 years, and how well that's worked. Not a lot of look. It's baseball, and I get it, but not a lot of hits
Well, I mean, I think this year is a huge year on that front, right? I mean, look, Leiter looks like he's turning out to be a serviceable big league starter. It's a big year for Rocker. Jake Latz was a mid-round pick who could factor in significantly in this bullpen, or the rotation. And obviously, if Wyatt Langford becomes the MVP type player that Skip Schumaker says he is, and Carter becomes an everyday player, and Josh Young is an everyday player, that's pretty good homegrown development over the last 10 years. Admittedly, the first 10 years were not good, and Kip got a long runway there. But I do think that this year will, in a lot of ways, make a final verdict on either the Rangers need to change direction there, or that what they did starting really in 2017 moving forward with their draft process really has produced results.
Yeah, well, because look, and on those players as well, not just Kip, but Josh Young, Evan Carter, they don't have good years this year. The Rangers got to make a decision, right?
That's right.
Yeah. So this is a big season for a lot of people here to prove what they can do. The crazy thing about all this is that, as we were just talking about earlier, is how the pitching has responded. And I have to believe some of that is the ballpark and how it's playing. That has to be a correlation there, although it did take a year or so for that to play out the way that it has. Do you know? I know that Chris Young has talked about getting numbers on the ballpark and how it's translated, but I don't think there's ever been anything definitive, has there?
Every time I've asked about data or verdicts, I've gotten nothing from the Rangers that gives any insight whatsoever. I mean, I got some cockamamie theory last year that there was a door open on the, and this didn't come from Chris Young, that there was a door into a tunnel, one of the tunnels on the backside of the stadium that had been kind of locked into the open position and some air was coming in. And I'm not sure I buy that, but look,
I've been to that door. I went to that door, and when I opened it, I flew like 30 feet backwards. It was
I mean,
So it's your
unbelievable.
fault. So you
Yes.
broke the Rangers. You're the one who opened the door.
You should have seen me trying to close that door. Oh my gosh. I was struggling so hard. It was like Dorothy in the Wizard of Oz. It was just unbelievable.
guys talk about the effects of the curing of cement and what that does over time. I don't have answers. I do know this, Kevin, right? Again, hitting was down all around baseball. I do think this ballpark plays more pitcher friendly. Um, and it does favor left-handed fly ball pitchers. And to that, I do think that, the Rangers have identified that as something that is an advantage, and they've tried to really plumb that a little bit. I think it wasn't the sole reason that Mackenzie Gore was added, but I think that profile also fit for somebody who, if we're looking for a guy who's going to take the next big step, all of the circumstances around this park and the defense that we play behind him, that all really points in the right direction.
And he's a fly ball pitcher. So let me ask you this. That's the next question then. So they would never consider at this point, like I guess we can say never at this point. That's two oxymorons. So let me just say, would they consider at any point, do you think, moving the fences in?
We've not gotten to that point. When I asked about the fences last year, it was like, we're not at that point.
Yeah, I just wonder if maybe they, in the long run, prefer this. If you would you rather have a pitcher friendly park than a hitter friendly? I mean, they had a hitter friendly park for 20 years, right? And so, and that didn't get them a lot. They eventually got to the World Series, but
I think they want a fair park. I think that's the easiest way to construct a team. Is if you put together a fair park, then you're just not fair park like where the state fair is, because that's a really big park.
Yeah.
And they got a really big outfielder there.
Yes, they do.
But I do think they just you'd want to put together a fair park, because then it doesn't, like, you don't have to go find any particular profile of hitters except a good hitter. You want a guy who's got good balance and good speed and all of that. So I really think that ultimately that's what the Rangers would like to have, is a fair park. And if that means that they need to eventually alter the dimensions some, I think they will. But I don't think they look at that as the reason their offense didn't perform last year. Their offense just didn't perform, period.
Yeah. All right. Before we get out of here, this is the first Rangers roundtable we're having on the podcast. I'm going to ask us, all three of us, we're going to give a win projection on this team for this year. I'll go first since I'm the one that brought it up. I'm going to say they win 82 games. 82 and 80. That's me. So, Shawn, what do you say?
Why they're going to win 82 and go 82 and 80?
I just don't think that the hitting's going to be that much better. I think that the pitching will be decent. I think it's going to be really hard to expect both DeGrom and Evaldi at their ages, and the fact that DeGrom came back and had such a big year last year. I think he'll have a really struggle doing that 2 years in a row. The bullpen, not great. Seattle is really good. The Astros are still pretty good. I think all those are factors in them. I just don't have faith in this offense bouncing back. we see, there are some new guys and newer guys, but and maybe it is just a product of, just like in 2023 when they went all the way and everything broke right. Then the last 2 years everything broke wrong. Maybe it's time for it to come back to the middle. If they get back to the middle, if this is a
We're
league
pretty
average
much in the
offense,
middle last year.
well, no, there was a league. If it's a league average offense this
Oh, okay.
year, then I think, yeah, then okay, then they got a chance because the pitch has been really good. But the pitching was really good last year. It was tremendous, and they missed the playoffs. So that's why I think that 82 and 80.
Sean, why don't
Shawn,
you go next because I know everything. So you go next.
You know
yeah,
everything, right? So I'll go 86, 86 wins. I think there will be improvement offensively strictly on the fact that I do not expect Joc Pederson to be 180 hitter again. I believe in some of the strides Jake Berger has taken this offseason to one, stay healthier and make some swing adjustments. Um, and I think Brendan Nimmo can be an offensive upgrade over Dulce Garcia. I think Josh Smith can be an offensive upgrade over Marcus Semien for at least half of the season. We'll see what happens starting August 1st. Um, I am the bullpen worries me. I think it's not that I don't like the individual signings or individual pitchers. I just think you were asking a lot to rebuild the bullpen on a bargain 2 consecutive winters and get the same results. They really struck gold last year with the bullpen on the cheap. I think it's really hard to repeat that. I believe in the pitching. I also think if there could be slight regression. Maybe they're not the best rotation baseball. Maybe they're top 5 or top 7. That's still really good. But to your point, we saw what they did with the best rotation baseball last season, and it wasn't great. So I'll go 86. I think the offense will be better. I just think there are enough question marks to hold it back from being a guaranteed playoff team.
I too was gonna go 86, but since Sean took that number, I am gonna go and be a glass
102,
half
102 wins. That's what Evan says.
huh?
102 wins.
I'm
Evan
gonna be a
Grant.
glass half full guy. I'm gonna say 87. Um,
Wow, that's bold.
I think the Rangers felt like they were an 85 win team based on their projections. I haven't ever checked the veracity of their projections before they acquired Mackenzie Gore, and I think that they feel like Mackenzie Gore is worth 2 or 3 wins. So I'm going to say that they've got 87 wins in them. I don't think, like, as long as Jacob deGrom stays healthy, I don't think there's going to be any real regression from him there. He is a once in a quarter century type pitcher. And so I think he's going to pitch just as well as he did last year. Can Nathan Eovaldi repeat, a 1.73 ERA? I don't know, but I think their rotation is deeper this year. I think that they do have some questions about the bullpen, and I'd almost correct Sean to this. They did it on the cheap in the bullpen 2 straight years already, and so you're asking it for a third year because the Kirby Yates signing was
Yeah.
a grand heist. I think I think the bullpen success is largely going to depend on the fact that they've got to get a young guy or two to step forward. Cole Winn took a step forward last year. He's got to take another step this year. Somebody like Gavin Collier, who was throwing 98 and 99 yesterday with big slider and a nice cutter at 94 miles an hour, is a guy to really keep an eye on. So is lefty Robbie Alstrom. These are the kinds of guys who could potentially take steps this year and factor in the bullpen. But yes, the bullpen does concern me, and it's only. I do think that we talked about how cheap the Rangers were able to fix the bullpen last year. We don't give enough credit to the fact that Latz came from the system and really took on a big role in the bullpen when he wasn't starting, and that Cole Winn really took a step forward. Rangers have to do that again this year. Mark Church and Emiliano Teodo would be the easy guys to single out, but both those guys are behind. So they're not going to be ready for the start of the season. And Josh Sborz is a complete wild card. But yeah, that's what the Rangers have to do. They've got to get somebody from the young part of their organization to take a step forward in the bullpen to really solidify that.
Yeah, that's the thing here is that, and we get back to that once again about your farm system and how it's doing, and of course, guys have moved up, and guys have taken big roles, and Wyatt Langford is a big time success story. He was also a top 5 pick, and you better be hitting on top 5 picks, and that is the issue. It's what you're doing in the rounds after that and later on that really mark you as a world class draft analyst, predictor, picker, whatever we want to call it. Look, we've talked for a long time. We said we were only going to do 30 minutes, and we're at 50 right now. So
there's no shortage of good information and good hot takes on the Rangers.
Good hot takes. That's right, exactly. That's what we're all about. Good hot takes. All right, that's going to do it for this week. We hope you come back next week. We'll be talking about the other stuff besides the Rangers next week. We'll also have the Mavericks and maybe a little Stars, and then we'll talk a little bit about the Cowboys too as they try to muddle their way along here and figure out what they're doing. So, from everybody in here to everybody out there, thanks, and we'll see you next time.